wire glue, advertised as a soldering iron in a can. Can it do just that? Can it solder? Can it replace our soldering iron in situations where we can't have a soldering iron? Now, this is something I was super excited to try out because sometimes soldering can be a pain in the butt. You have to make sure you have your station set up. You have to make sure you have good airflow or be wearing a respirator. And sometimes you just need a quick little fix and you don't want to bust out the entire unit. Mine is a larger unit. And so sometimes it's just a hassle. So wire glue immediately appealed to me for those quick fix situations. Now, in order to give this a fair shot, we're going to look at the intended uses here. So on the packaging for wire glue, it says for science fairs, for hobbies, or for home repair. It goes on to say computer repair, hobby, again, and TV and radio repair. So I've come up with 3 situations that I don't think exceed their intended uses, but we'll still put this glue to the test to see if it will be hardy enough to replace soldering on a very basic level. All right, if you're gonna be using wire glue to fix things yourself, you're gonna have some other tools with you as well. So wire glue, firstly, I have this hyper tough Walmart brand multi-tool kit. So just a screwdriver with tons of bits. I love this thing. It's actually great. This extension's fantastic. It's all magnetic, so these never fall out of the screwdriver, which for something so cheap, you don't really see that often. Once you've opened up your project and you're looking at the wires you're trying to connect, having some wire strippers / cutters are gonna be a necessity. If you can't get enough of that inner core of the wire showing, you're not gonna be able to get too much done. So some cheap wire cutters. All right, next up is gonna be electrical tape. This is gonna be super important for insulating your project, but also to help create a little more of a mechanical bond, because I'm not sure how well that wire glue is gonna hold stuff together. So I'm gonna use some tape, hopefully to help secure our projects. Some flush cut cutters here. Great to get really close cuts on things. Utility knife, and of course, a flashlight. You might need to do something in the middle of the night or in the dark. And finally, some type of super glue, if this will come out. JB Weld, Super Weld seem to be the perfect option for this type of thing. If you're in a hurry, doing some last minute repairs, getting something that can get solid in about 10 seconds is a must-have. And off to the side here, we have our multimeter. So that's gonna go in there as well. So if you have any other tools you think might be necessary for little projects that you're trying to fix with something like wire glue, go ahead and let me know. But for now, this is our to-go bag. To put the glue to the test, we're gonna be doing 3 separate repairs. And to start, we're gonna be fixing the battery power supply cable in this pedal. All right, so this is actually super embarrassing to admit, but I did this to a pedal a long time ago. I was getting ready for a gig, and back at this point of my life, I only had 1 pedal. So I would take the pedal, I'd have a battery in it, and I'd run that going into my amp. It was a distortion pedal, and the amp had reverb, and that's just how I would play gigs. So I was going to a gig, and I knew I needed to change the battery on my pedal. I had died while I was practicing. Luckily, it didn't die during the show, but I got there, and I only had maybe an hour before I went on. So I had plenty of time to take my time, but I was still freaking out because, I don't know, anxiety or something. And I took the battery here. Can we see it? Yes. And I was trying to get this off. And sometimes these are made of like a fabric material, and mine was made of fabric, and it was not coming off. No matter how I was trying to pick it, it just kept slipping away from me. And so I was like, oh, I'm just gonna pull here because on this one it doesn't work. Well, guess what? If you do that too many times, or if you grab just one and then you pull, you break it. And so that happened. And I ended up not using that pedal at the show and just used the amp, and it went fine. But imagine you have this hour and you brought your toolkit with you. It's in the trunk of your car, or maybe just in your backpack. It's not a lot of things. What are you gonna do? You best out the wire glue. Boom. So today we're going to pretend I had my wire glue with me. We're going to set a timer. We'll say 50 minutes. And from this point here, we are going to try to see if we can get this pedal fully functioning again with our toolkit. 50 minutes, at that 50 minutes mark, we're gonna have to have this closed up, plugged in, ready to go. and see how it plays out. So without further ado, and time starts now. First things first, you're gonna want to try to get as much of this leftover bit pulled out as possible. Now we're going to use our wire cutters to give ourselves a little extra to work with. Maybe a little more than that. We can tape it up maybe. All right, boom, wire glue time. Something you're going to want to keep in your tool bag as well if you're using wire glue is something to mix that glue up. A toothpick. I have this watch tool that I don't use this one, so it's fine to sacrifice for the cause. When mixing wire glue, you're gonna have to mix it a lot because it is very clumpy and you're not gonna get a good connection if you aren't getting a consistent consistency. This stuff is super runny, so we're gonna have to figure out a way to secure these together. All right, I pushed them into each other and it looks like that's actually gonna be enough friction to keep them together.
And by them, I'm referring to obviously the two ends of the black wire there. This is a kind of stranded wire, not a solid core. So I was able to weave them into each other just by kind of gently pressing them together. And they held on, and the glue is being applied. Now, this is narrator Josh, by the way. There's times where I just kind of stop talking and zone out and forget I'm filming something. And at those times, I will be here to guide you. But yeah, it looks good.
All right, it seems to be holding. We're gonna let this dry and in 44 minutes, so it took 6 minutes, 44 minutes, we're gonna see if we're able to plug in a battery and use this pedal as intended. Okay, our timer just went off. This is still soft a little bit, but what we're gonna do, we're gonna try to reinforce it with some electrical tape. Ooh, a little bit here. Hopefully that does it. Gonna plug in our battery. It's showtime. First things first, we're gonna check if our voltage is even going through. All right, we're getting 9 volts. So at this point, we know that the battery connection is fixed, but will it be able to handle this bend we're about to put into it? This might be the end. We're gonna be delicate. Give it the best shot possible at succeeding. Do another check before we close it up. All right, we're getting the right voltage. So the good news is we've already confirmed that the glue is conductive. It was passing 9 volts through. On the packaging, it says that the glue can cure overnight. So it doesn't give you an exact time frame. And it was definitely a little soft still, so there are concerns here. Let's get plugged in and moment of truth this. Input, hey, we're getting power. That's awesome. All right, we're gonna do a check for sound. One of the things they marketed for this glue was radio and TV repair. Now, I don't have a TV or a radio that needs repairing, but I do have another pedal. And this one, however, is gonna need a lot more connections handled. This is a Joyo vintage phase board, a super cheap pedal. Recently, while playing around with this circuit board, I realized there was a way to improve some of the functions I didn't like. And while I was doing that, I left it in a storage box for too long, and these broke loose. This is our power switch, and without this hooked up, nothing works. So we're gonna try to connect 6 small leads to this board using only
glue. Now this is going to be difficult. So we're going to bust out the handy old wire cutters and strippers again. We're going to want plenty of wire to work with. Wow, this is incredibly thin wire. No wonder this broke. Now, it would have probably been fine had I not taken it apart, but nonetheless, some thicker wire would not hurt anybody in this situation. All right, now that we got all of our wires stripped and ready to glue, we're going to try to figure out how to do these one at a time. We're going to be using our tweezers, I think. And we're also going to find out how long it takes for this glue to set. I'm going to go ahead and switch to stopwatch here. I passed it. There we go. Get a little bit of glue here. Sorry if I'm blocking your view. We're just going to try to move this around. All right, we got it covered. We're going to try to hold it here until it dries.
This clip is on 10 times speed. This is another downside of this glue. It's very hard to get things set exactly where you need it when it's a tight fit or when you don't have a hole to drop a lead through. So something to think about. How are you going to fix that thing in place while it dries?
All right, let's try this again. I was able to get the wire to look like it'll stay. Question is, will it stay in place long enough? Ooh, that's a lot of glue. And start. All right, we're going to let that sit a while. Yeah.
This part was brutal. On the pedal, the glue was still soft after 50 minutes, but since we were able to work the wires together and wrap the connection in electrical tape, it worked well enough to serve as an emergency fix. This, however, was a connection that relied solely on the bond of the glue to keep the wire to the board. Even more demanding, it was going to be 6 of these connections super close together. After 2 hours, the glue finally got to a point where it felt solid. Maybe if we had waited another 2 hours, we would have been fine, but unfortunately...
Oh, he just peeled it. Oh... It did not adhere. It was just one flat panel. So even though they say that the curing time is overnight, if you're showing this off as a product to be used for science fair projects, hobby projects, fixing a TV, you're not going to be able to go ahead and do one, wait a day, do the next, wait a day, do the next, so forth. You don't have 6 days to get your stuff back to working condition.
Editing Josh here with some notes. I wanted to go into a little more detail as to why I believe repair number 2 is a failure. If you are repairing something without a soldering iron, for example, replacing a capacitor or replacing a broken switch on your guitar pedal, you are going to have to cut off the broken unit first. So just like this test, you won't have a solid place to insert your leads or wires. In my opinion, in this specific situation, you're looking at more work just figuring out the best way to use this glue versus figuring out how to use a soldering iron. The reason the glue passed test 1 is it replaced the soldering iron in 2 ways. Simplicity is number 1. The effort needed did not exceed the difficulty of using a soldering iron. 2, convenience. There is no guarantee that a music venue would let me plug in my soldering iron, but I highly doubt anyone would have given me any trouble opening a bottle of glue.
All right, so this is a lightsaber from Galaxy's Edge. Holly and I made them when we went to Disney, and Holly was like, hey, I'd love to have this hanging up on the wall, just lit up. So I went ahead and took the speaker out. So now it can just be like a green decoration that's probably so blown out. But anyway, I'll go ahead and tear this down right now because I'm going to reconnect the speaker I took out of it.
And just to clarify, you don't need to do a full teardown to get to the speaker or the batteries. You just unscrew the bottom, and then once that's off, you press down on this, turn left, and pull up, and that's how you get your battery case out, which also has the speaker. I did a full teardown because I like making my life super complicated, apparently. And so, back to the video.
And then we're going to have to take this little cap off. I think it was that was it. Original speaker. But we're going to go ahead and do 2 things. Boom. Soldering iron some solder. That was less than $10 after tax. It was like $9.70 something for a starter a soldering iron kit. I wanted to put my money where my mouth was and show a simple, cheap soldering iron at work. So all I'm gonna do is I'm going to remove these little leads with this soldering iron to show, you know, that a cheap soldering iron can get you by. My assumption is that it has oil on it to prevent it from rusting from the factory. That's my assumption. So do this in a very open space, do it in your garage, do it even outside, as long as there's not a fire hazard of where you're doing it, do it there. Let's see if it can handle taking off. Wow, that ate through that solder. Wow, instant. That's awesome. Perfection. Super impressive. Super fast. All right, this being our final project, I'm gonna give this the best possible chance of not failing on us, okay? So what I'm gonna do is do a tiny drip just where the wire connects, then bang, and then put the wire glue as well. Ready to go, just a little drop.
Just to be very clear, you want to apply this to the sleeve of the wire and not the actual metal part of the wire.
There we go. All right, looking good. Just a drop at a time, you know? Drop at a time. I think that's looking really good. Let's get back to this in the morning and beat the crap out of a lightsaber. Okie dokie, we are here. This has been sitting overnight. We gave it the full cure time. We're gonna throw it in the lightsaber, beat the heck out of it, and see if the speaker still works. Let's get into it. All right, here we are. Oh, that is quiet. One second, let's see if I can find my lightsaber for comparison here. Now mine is dead. Batteries. This is my lightsaber. Speaker, super loud. Good. Test the one that we just did. That's so quiet. I still want to give it the benefit of the doubt. It might be the speaker, right? So we're still going to do our impact test. And then we're going to take everything out and we're going to solder those connections with solder and see if it produces the noise level that we are expecting. All right, let's get to it. We're just going to do it right here. We're going to hit the desk. Lightsaber's on. It just changed colors. The dark side is too powerful in me. I'm corrupting the crystal. All right, I'm confident that this connection's still there. Let's get in this. Let's solder those connections and see if that fixes the volume level. Try to loosen up this glue a bit.
I'm pulling out the isopropyl alcohol, my go-to for removing glues, and then once the glue seems to have softened up a bit, I use a plastic scraper tool and just start scraping away at the contacts.
So we're just gonna go ahead and wire this up the exact same way, but with solder.
And this is real time. This is how fast the soldering is compared to using the glue.
All right, black is connected.
And here's an example of how simple soldering can be. I'm just putting a blob of solder on the tip of my soldering iron, and I'm bringing it right down to the red wire and letting it heat up until it fully covers the wire and the pad, and then we're done.
Happy with that.
I'd like to see the glue do that.
Final test. That
but that's a normal volume level. Final thoughts on the wire glue. For project 1, that's actually a pass. I used this again today, no issues. I banged it a bunch and it was still giving us power, which is awesome. It's something that I will hold on to wire glue in my car, in my little to-go bag, just in case there's something like this where I have the time, it's one connection, it works, it makes sense. Perfect. Project 2, I'm gonna have to give project 2 a fail. It's just, it doesn't make sense to me with this glue that takes so long to dry, to do something that needs this many connections with it. You're looking at anywhere from a 3-day, if you want to give it like 4 to 6 hours to dry, or a 6-day project if you're going to do one line per day to let it have a full night of drying. It just, at that point, I feel like you could use that time more wisely, just learning to solder and getting these on in a definitely more solid connection. So yeah, for me, it's a fail on this. And you might be saying, Josh, why wouldn't you just use the super weld to line up each one, get it placed, dry, and then make the connection? The reason why is this stuff is really runny, and I was very careful on the lightsaber, but it's very possible that this prevented the lightsaber from having a full connection. I'm going to, that's on me if that happens. And so for that, I'm going to say this is risky to use. It might be the exact thing in the situation, but for me, just the glue by itself is a fail on something like this. I would not turn to it for that myself in the future. The final project was the lightsaber. I have to give this a pass. Technically, it worked. Technically, we got sound. We fully connected a speaker to this and we got sound. It made the connection. It was very quiet. It was very quiet. And there's 2 possible reasons for this in my mind. One is that when we were using the JB super weld, we might have covered too much of the contact with the super weld, and that could have prevented a solid enough connection with our wire glue. The second thing that could have gone wrong is the wire glue just could not have been conductive enough to carry what was needed to the speaker, and that's why we got a diminished level of volume. I'm gonna give it a pass because I don't know objectively what went wrong. So we did get sound. It did take a beating. I would say if you wanted to replace something on a toy, you might have good luck with it. At the end of the day, if you're gonna be buying a $10 bottle of wire glue that might work, or a $10 setup of a soldering iron and solder that will definitely work once you get the hang of it, I will have to say soldering iron every time. Soldering can seem super intimidating, but I just want to let you know it's not as difficult as you might think. And there's different levels of soldering. There's some people that make the most beautiful joints, the most beautiful connections. That doesn't have to be you. That's definitely not me, but I get by. I would say I am right between beginner and intermediate level with soldering, and I get by, and everything I work on tends to stay together. And it's okay if it doesn't, because you bust out the soldering iron and you go again. So get out there, learn how to solder if you're looking how to fix things. If you use solder glue, please let me know your secrets. If you think it's a complete waste of time, let me know so I stop trying to buy the different types, because I want the glue. I want the conductive glue. That'd be so cool. But for now, I'm sticking with a soldering iron. And have a great day, and hope to see you in the next one.